They came together to master an enticing new danger at a time when it was still acceptable to be in awe of all possibilities. The following regulations established by the United States Air Service will be adhered to. In case an engine fails on takeoff, land straight ahead, regardless of obstacles. Riding on the steps, wings, or tail of a machine is prohibited. No spins will be indulged in as they unnecessarily strain the machine. Passengers will only enter flying machines through the door. Hedge hopping or similar stunts will not be tolerated. The above government regulations do not necessarily apply to civilian aviators. The early days of aviation on Long Island in New York. There hasn't been a period in history like it since. Ragtime, Dixieland, foot-tapping rhythms of the flapper era were everywhere. And Sunday tinkerers were everywhere working on homemade versions of what the Wright brothers had first put together.
The object of this invention is to construct an aeroplane that will make an almost direct ascent.
It was the fabled 20s and 30s, when the sight of a balloon or flying machine overhead still stirred visions of far-off places and magical expectations. Roosevelt and Curtis Fields, part of Long Island's wide Hempstead Plains, had become America's most forgiving runway. Pilots could take off and land in almost any direction. There was so much open space. It had room for mistakes. Guidelines about what would probably work in the air and what would likely get you killed in one of these wood, cloth, and metal barnstormers were still being written, one flight at a time. Eleanor Smith, then a high school sophomore from Freeport, Long Island, irrevocably drawn to the roar of ever more powerful engines on these treeless plains, would write in her memoir, Aviatrix, "We had no notion that we were watching history in the making. For all the uproar drew every promoter, con man, drifter, and fast buck artist like metal shavings to a magnet." She soloed at 15, broke both altitude and endurance records the following year, and at 19 was voted best woman pilot in the United States by her licensed pilot peers. Paul Rizzo was there too. He learned to fly in 2 weeks and became an instructor the next. He's still at it at 94. Tom Murphy, at 85, teaching aerobatics over Long Island in this Navy fighter trainer. He was there. Bill Schwenk saw it all. At 83, he's about to test fly this retooled World War I Jenny engine after he refits it to his rebuilt Pheasant H-10. At 85, former airline captain Herb Ottewill is still happiest when piloting his J-3 Cub cross-country. They and Len Klasmeyer, Rudy Klein, Pete Brucia, George Dade, Norm Duncan, Sig Aldert, Perry Duryea, Carl Alber, and Ed Harrington were there when Long Island was as one boundless airfield. This is their rich eyewitness account. This is the way they remember it.
My dad was bringing us back from Coney Island in a surrey with a fringe on top, a nice horse that he owned, and I heard this noise. And then I see this pusher biplane coming up off Brighton Beach with a man sitting up in front and controlling it with 2 sticks. And that really thrilled me. It made an awful racket. It didn't go very fast, but I could see his face, and he was looking down at us when he flew over. And fortunately, we were still out in the open, and there weren't any trees around. I had a good look at this thing.
We lived up in the Bronx then, and I remember one day there was an airplane, which was very unusual then, and I'm watching it, and I don't know whether he did it purposely or what, but he spun it, you know. Oh, I was awestruck.
During a school recess, a blimp went over. Maybe I was 7 or 8 years old, and watching this thing go past, I just had to be up there somehow or other.
We used to take bicycles and ride from where I lived out to Roosevelt Field, and it was before Lindbergh. I remember seeing Lindbergh out there before he made his flight. Didn't know who he was then.
Hey, look out, will you?
I rode over to Curtis Field in Valley Stream on a bike. And when Frank Hawks came with Time Flies, when he set the transcontinental race and landed at Valley Stream. And I was looking through the fence, and he said, "Hey, kid, if you got nothing to do, come on in here." And he, with a rag, and I was, first thing you know, I was chief mechanic in charge of wiping it off. And I was afraid to wash my hands because I had touched this great airplane,
Sig Aldert, one of aviation's most respected flight instructors, taught more than 1,000 people to fly. The marvel of flight, of flying, all began for him at Roosevelt Field.
The job was merely a helper in the hangar. I knew little or nothing about airplanes. I had to clean them. I learned how to start them by pulling the propeller. And being of my large stature, it got to be known around there that even from other hangars, if they had trouble starting an airplane, get Sig.
Pulling a prop that could kick back with the deadly force of a guillotine was considered pretty dangerous.
It was dangerous, yes. And then it was dangerous if you had absent-minded people walking around the field and walking into one, and that happened too. They were decapitated.
I walked to Roosevelt Field every day, sometimes kind of rough in winter. But I picked up a little flying time. If you owned an airplane and I shined it for you, maybe you gave me 15 minutes dual or something, and maybe you only had a student permit. My pay, by the way, was $20 a week and a half-hour flying time.
My father found out that I was flying. He didn't know about it. And boy, he raised hell. He said, "You leave those damn things alone or out of the house you go." And then as an afterthought, he said, "Why don't you be like other kids and hang around a pool room?" That's what they thought of pilots in those days.
The first flight itself I have never forgotten. That's how much of an impression it made on me. Because you sat in a bullet-shaped cockpit out in the front. It was a pusher type. And you could just, to see those fields in front of you, and of course all beautifully laid out because it was all farmland. And the shafts of sunlight coming down on it was so exquisite. Well, anyway, I was hooked. That was it. I never had any trouble finding myself. I always knew I wanted to do that.
I was nervous about the takeoff because I'd always feared the airplane nosing over. In the early days, that was one of the problems. The fields were rutty, and frequently airplanes would just nose over and mostly just break the propeller.
Most of the time. Nevertheless, the kids would hang around doing odd jobs, just hoping to hear some pilot say, "Hey kid, you want to fly?"
I can remember just going around, and it was like going to heaven, I guess, for me, because I always looked up at them and saw them landing and worked on them, and here I'm finally getting into one to see what it is. And it surprises the dickens out of you. And especially at night, the first night flight, when you see the flames coming out of the exhaust, it scares the hell out of you. Because you don't know that them flames are coming out in the daylight because you can't see them. But when you see them coming out in the dark, oh boy, you know, we might be on fire.
The fumes coming from those exhaust stacks was sickening. I mean, we just had a little windshield in front of you. It didn't protect you.
The notion of taking off on an airborne adventure, of turning some wood, canvas, wire, and screws into a magic carpet, preoccupied many of Long Island's backyard tinkerers. It didn't always work out, of course.
A couple of kids that I knew, we were building this Heath parasaur. We never finished it, never got the money for the motor, you know. And we traded it in for a horse, but that was no good. The horse, whether you used him or not, he ate, you know, so he got rid of him.
Four of us got together, we bought an old gypsy moth. We paid $600 for it and fixed it up, and we essentially taught ourselves how to fly. One fellow had a private license, and that lasted for a couple of months, and then we wrecked the airplane. That was the end of that. But that's what got me started.
What do you do when your flight instructor passes out while you're airborne and you haven't yet put any time in how to get back down? Ed Harrington, who completed his career as a captain and chief pilot for Eastern Airlines, found himself in command of a student flight at 13. His instructor had stopped off at Roy's Clam House on Long Island for a little something to drink.
But when he came back, he was in some shape. Wow, boy. So he put me in the back, and he pulled the prop through. It's a wonder he didn't fall out.
Beat that bad turkey, and this is what happened.
Cockpit, and I took off from where we barnstormed. I had every bit of 2 hours then. And we flew back to Jamaica Sea Airport. Next thing I know, the door's open and his feet's hanging out the side of it. But there's no head, because he's passed out. He's had it. So I'm flying around, and the sea fog is rolling in, and I said, well, you know how to land. What else are you going to do? He's out of the picture. So I backed off and came in over Rockaway Boulevard and landed. And finally, we got him to a little bit, and he said, how do we get on the ground? I said, I landed. He said, well, so you're solo. And that was the way I soloed. I had about 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Incidentally, when you went solo in those days, somebody tied a scarf onto your strut, which was not only a mark of distinction, but it warned everybody that you had a real amateur and a real new boy flying the airplane.
Eleanor Smith had to report for her solo flight before she went to school.
First of all, I was scared silly because Russ hadn't told me I was going to solo that day. He just got out of the cockpit and said, go. And I didn't want him to. I had gotten used to him being there. But anyway, well, this is the way it is. I got to go. So I remember staring at the tachometer, and thinking, well, he's told me everything he knows, but what was in the back of my mind was, this is his airplane, and you got to bring it back in one piece. This is his living. And so I came around and landed, and he motioned me around again. I made 3 landings, and then it was time to go back to Wantagh because I had to go to school.
Ernie Marcus soloed me. Now that's a story that I'll never forget till the day I die. I thought I was ready to solo, you know, being a young hotshot, which we all think we are. And he always said, you're not going to solo till you make 3 perfect landings. That was the nature of the way we were taught to fly those days. And I landed, took off, landed, took off. And the 3rd time we taxied back, and he backed back. He's signaling me to go back further, and then turn around, so I turned. And next thing he was getting out, I said, where the hell are you going? He said, you've been hollering to solo, now I'm gonna let you go. And I was so good, as I thought, that I didn't even know I made three-point landings. It had to be three, tail skid and the wheels. And then I soloed in a drizzly day. But we got back to the airport, and I went home doing 90 miles an hour on my feet, running to tell my mother that I soloed. And hell, I was about 17, I guess, 16, 17. So that's, what, 60 years ago. I still fly.
It wasn't long after that Pete Brucia bought his own plane.
It cost me 22 cars. Now, we're talking the Depression days, which when you talk today to people, they think you just came out of Creedmoor or I should be in Central Islip. Used to go to the junkie, pay $1 or $2 for a car. Never paid more than $3.50 or $4, and sell it for $20 or $25. And at the end of the year, I had enough to buy the airplane. With $500.
Paul Rizzo soloed without any experience in a cockpit at all.
Paul never had any instruction. He just taught himself. And I don't think he's ever scratched an airplane. I don't know of it.
I just jumped in the plane and soloed it. I never had any hours. I read in a book how to fly an airplane, and in following those instructions, I did exactly what the book said.
I flew the airplane all day long, taking off from land and making turns, doing everything with it. And when I decided, well, I'm pretty good at flying at level, how do you spin this plane? I already read the book, but I got a hold of one of the pilots. How do you spin a plane? So he told me. So I went up several thousand feet, put it into a stall, and did exactly as the book had stated. Came down and sure enough went into a spin.
And I found out the most important thing in a spin. When you're spinning, you must stop the turn first, then come back with the stick and pull it back. If you attempt to pull the stick back in its spin while you're still turning, you'll go right down to the ground. It will not come out of a spin
until you stop the rotation first, then come back with the stick. After 2 weeks, I started giving instructions.
Paul was an excellent pilot.
Taught himself how to fly with a book in one hand, the control stick in the other. And all the while, his parents knew nothing about it, until somebody let the cat out of the bag.
And the way they found out was a student of mine by the name of Charlie Moore, who lived in Canarsie, came over the house on a Saturday and told either my father or mother, I forgot, tell Paul I will not be taking my flying lessons this weekend. And my father didn't know what he's talking about. Flying lessons, what do you mean? Well, Paul is teaching me to fly. So when my father found out I had an airplane, he said, all right, son, he says, I want you to do me a favor. I says, what? He says, I want you to drop 5 pounds of frankfurters in back of Mrs. Olson's house, right behind the kitchen window, if possible. The reason for that was that Mrs. Olson never passed my father's frankfurter stand, regardless of the hours, without buying a 5-cent all-beef frankfurter. As it states on that picture there, frankfurters 5 cents, Horton's ice cream 5 cents. So I took the 5 pounds of frankfurters, took them out to Curtis Field, put them in my Jenny, went over Canarsie flying low and slow, and I got over the house and then dropped the frankfurters right behind Mrs. Olson's kitchen window. You can't do that today.
I'm Janice Pendarvis.
And hello, I'm Tom Stewart. For the next few hours, you're going to have a lot of fun here on Member-Supported 13, so fasten your seatbelts and stay right where you are. Not long ago, it became clear that Long Island, America's true cradle of aviation, was about to lose the last of the barnstorming generation that wrote the book on early flight. In order to preserve that story, Michael Lawrence and Dick Milligan arranged to record the reminiscences of the pilots who are still here with us. Some 45 hours of their recollections were preserved on audio tape.
The material collected turned out to be so colorful, comical, and poignant that a television program seemed the next logical step. It took years to recreate aerial events and launch a nationwide search for stock footage. The fruits of this search are right before our eyes, thanks to diligent work and funding from station members who provide the means to share these exciting times.
This is really a story of local boy or girl makes good. And we're very pleased to have one of the two men responsible for its creation with us in our studio, and we'll speak with him in just a moment about this intriguing look back at a moment in history that truly deserves to be remembered. But first, you need to tell us that you support great documentaries on 13, as well as great nature and science series, public affairs, drama, kids shows, and music. 13 is a full-service resource that's growing by leaps and bounds thanks to sustained support from station members all throughout our broadcast area.
That's why we ask you to tell us which bonus gift you'd like us to send when you provide us support of your own. For instance, there's this beautiful book that serves as a full account of a brilliant period in local history. The Picture History of Aviation on Long Island tells the story of Roosevelt Field and other early aviation centers, like nearby Curtis and Mitchell Fields, the fields where daring flyers profiled in this documentary set endurance records, tested new aircraft and flying instruments, and completed outstanding flights that remain as milestones in our conquest of the skies. The book is our way to thank you for a station membership at our $75 level tonight.
Now, if you'd like to capture the excitement recreated and recorded in this special presentation, ask for the Daredevils and Dreamers home video for a station membership of $100. Or, if you're in the position to help us out in an even bigger way, we'll thank you big time with this special combination package, the Picture History of Aviation on Long Island and the home video, both for a station membership of $150. But what's really important to remember during this campaign for your support is that we need to hear from more of you than ever before. It would be really great if every one of you watching right now would fly over to your phone and call us at 1-800-272-1313. Join us at the $40 new membership level. Now remember that all membership levels in 13 include a year's subscription to our station magazine and program guide, and your personal member card, which offers discounts at great places like museums, theaters, and retail stores all over New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. So please, give a call right now and let us know that you want to get in on a great thing, member-supported television, that brings you such great programs as Daredevils and Dreamers. And now, before we talk to one of the creators of this special presentation, here's a reminder about how you can make your member dollars have extra value.
Perfect pairs just sort of go together, like you and 13, and just maybe your company and 13. See if the folks you work for will match your contribution and double the dollar amount of your gift. A lot of companies will. Check with your Human Resources Department to find out. The perfect pair begins with just the right match.
And joining us right now is one of the men instrumental for Daredevils and Dreamers. He's Michael Lawrence, and welcome to 13. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Tom.
And congratulations on such a compelling, wonderful program, so evocative.
Well, it's been great fun to do it, really. We had a chance to really go back in history and meet some of these people who we found to be so courageous and self-effacing at the same time. They had a wonderful story to tell, but we had to rush it a bit because it was a generation that is on the way to leave us. Mm-hmm. And so over the past 5 years, we did our best to try to grab their stories, and then we started looking for the footage to back up their stories.
Because you were saying this, because we were saying 45 hours of audio reminiscences preceded the actual video.
That's right, which is really kind of the reverse way of doing this kind of thing. Normally you'd go out and get the footage, then you'd find the survivors of that period, and you'd ask them, what do you remember about this? Mm-hmm. And then that becomes a piece of your soundtrack. This time what we did was we got the stories, and then we said, where do we find this footage? Because we heard wonderful little anecdotes and poignant reminiscences, and we said, where can we find this? Well, it took 5 years, and lo and behold, we came up with most of it.
And I understand another one of your big challenges is something that we talk about here during fundraising on a daily basis, getting the money together for the project.
You're right. There's a myth out there, and it has to be put to rest, and that is that producers really have deep pockets, and that's not true. We really don't have deep pockets. We have to spend about 95% of our time looking for the funds to make these programs. So, in fact, when we say, viewers like you, that you are the people who can help us. They're really our co-producers. These are the real producers because they make it possible for us to complete the programs that we only have ideas about at the very beginning.
And tell us a little bit about how you actually got together with 13 to air it right here tonight.
Well, it was about 3 or 4 years into the project, and we said to ourselves, well, how are we possibly going to finish this? This, in fact, was a labor of love. It was tough to raise the funds. We had some support from various people, but then your president, Bill Baker, took a look at it and said, how would you like us to help you finish it? Well, he didn't have to wait for our answer. We were very grateful for him coming along to us and saying, by all means, you know, we'll help you do that. And it's because of the viewers who have made that possible. And we're so grateful to them for having done that.
You know, today we always think of pilots as being sort of godlike figures with their 747s, but back then when this was happening, the world did not look as kindly on a pilot, I understand.
No, they didn't. As a matter of fact, as you will recall in the first part of this program, one of them was flying, one of the kids was flying, came home, told his dad he was flying, and his dad said, as you heard, leave those damn things alone or out of the house you'll go. And in fact, he says, why don't you hang around the pool room instead like other kids? They did not really respect flyers, and I think that people were intrigued by them. And as you will see in the next part of the film, people came to Roosevelt Field on Sundays very often because they had never seen a plane. Mm-hmm. And so they wanted to see what this was all about. And what they saw was pretty extraordinary. And we were able to find some of the footage that relates to that.
And in terms of the footage that you found, which is fascinating to me, what do you feel is like your most exciting find that's in the film?
Well, as a matter of fact, there is one piece I'll tell you a little bit about it because you will see it.
Okay.
There was a story about a German flyer who used to come to Roosevelt Field. His name was Ernst Udet. And the story was that he would come to the field with his little 7-cylinder airplane and he would pick up handkerchiefs with his wingtip. And thousands of people would come to watch this, and we spent a long time looking for this. We had the words, we didn't know where we would find the footage, and one day Dick and I were looking through this material at the National Archives, and about the third day, he said to me, look at this. And there it was. So we have it, and we look forward to showing it to you in the next portion of this program.
And we've already met her, and we'll see more of her, I know, later in the show. But tell us a little bit more about where is she today? And I'm referring to Eleanor Smith.
Oh, Eleanor is one of our favorite people. She was one of the greatest aviators. She lives in Santa Cruz, California. She originated in Freeport. Her dad was a well-known vaudevillian, and she became a very well-known aviator. And as a matter of fact, she wrote a wonderful book called Aviatrix. And in fact, we quoted that, I think, in the beginning of the program, that people found Roosevelt Field to be like catnip to the public. And so people came out very often to see her perform. She was extraordinary. She was voted the best woman pilot by her peers. She broke so many records as a mere teenager. As you will see, she challenged a chauvinist who said that he could do things that no woman could do. And you'll find out that she did it better than anyone else could do it, including him.
Having to do with 4 bridges
that
circle Manhattan, and that's all I'll say now.
Yeah, for which he got into some serious trouble.
We're going to be getting back to the show in just a few minutes, but before we do, what could you say to that viewer out there who loves public television but still hasn't gotten to the phone to give them their support?
Oh, this is the time to do it. We run into so many ideas which are really time-sensitive concepts that if you don't get to them, particularly in the historical area, then you lose them. We were lucky this time because we had the support from Channel 13. We had the backing to actually complete this before, sadly, some of the people who are in this program would leave us. And so we were really up against a time constraint. We were able to complete it, and it is really thanks to viewers like you. Or I would like to say instead, we're very thankful to co-producers like you, because you're the ones who really make it possible.
Thanks an awful lot, Michael. We'll see you a little bit later in the evening. But you now there, please give us a call. It's 1-800-272-1313, and do it right now.
Hi, I'm Patti LaBelle. Join me and my friends Luther Vandross and Mariah Carey on Patti LaBelle Live, one night only, here on 13.
It's a birthday celebration.
I'm Sidney Ferguson. I live in the Bronx, and I'm a playboy.
It's really that man of music, Skitch Henderson, and he and his friends Steve Allen, Harolyn Blackwell, Sid Charisse, Bill Dana, Tony Danza, Julius LaRosa, Isaac Stern, and many more join host Liz Smith and Mike Wallace at the Carnegie Hall festivities for Skitch Henderson at 80.
Friday night at 8 on member-supported 13.
That's what's ahead here on member-supported 13. But it's important to keep the big picture in mind concerning what we hope to do with your help. 13 serves about 5.5 million people throughout the area each week, and we're more than just a television station.
Janice, 13 is also the creator of innovative educational projects, such as the National Teacher Training Institute. We're also the publisher of Teachers and Viewers Guides that enhance the educational value of all of our productions. We help adults as well as children learn to read and to speak English and achieve high school accreditation. And as broadcast and media converge, 13 is blazing trails in the creation of web pages, CD-ROMs, educational software, and other cutting-edge media products.
It isn't always easy to keep up with the needs of our community, but with your help, the sky's the limit. And just like our daredevils and dreamers, we can soar as high as we want. We can continue our mission of lifelong learning and great entertainment straight on through into the 21st century. Help us do that this very night. Get in touch with us at 1-800-272-1313 and enjoy more Daredevils and Dreamers right now. If you've called us already, we thank you. Stay tuned.
Gliding range of the field.
Whoever taught you to fly, that's the way you flew.
I'm gliding towards the field, towards my spot. I'm gradually losing altitude.
Now, you never made a turn unless you put the nose down. So, consequently, as you make a turn, as you increase the bank, the stalling speed of the airplane goes up. So you're reaching a stalling speed. So if you put the nose down, you're not going to reach that stalling speed and fall out of the sky. Now, you got to remember, or you don't remember, or you don't know, but airplane accidents were common. Common as hell. Look at all the airplanes that were built in this country by the pioneers that killed themselves because they didn't know how to fly them. They built them, then they couldn't fly them, and they take off and bang, right?
The way to survive was to practice. Eleanor couldn't understand why pilots would get bored with that.
I could fly 5 or 6 hours at a clip and do nothing but come in and practice landings. And because I was just shooting at a target, I wanted to be sure I knew what I was doing. I wanted to know what every single inch of wing space would do. And it was the only way to learn it. And you had to do it by yourself. And so I was just in seventh heaven.
Women in general weren't supposed to be in that kind of seventh heaven. They were supposed to be in the kitchen, or working as secretaries or seamstresses. There were women who didn't agree.
Brunette versus blonde daredevil. Dark-haired Yuba Kimmy matches nerve with Alice Gibson in a contest for a parachute jumping job.
The wager? Which one of these two parachutists would be the most accurate?
It's in the bag.
Going down, never even hesitated. Blondie's right on her heels. It's a 2,000-foot drop to solid earth. Away they sail. They're aiming for a marker placed on the field. The girl who lands nearest cops the paycheck. Miss Brunette wins. She landed only a few feet from the goal. And P.S., she got the job.
Well, I told you I had it in the bag and I won.
Anything to do with flying had become hot news. It captured the headlines most weekdays and captivated thousands at Roosevelt Field on Sundays.
They put the air show on to bring the people out. It was just so that people could come out and see these airplanes. Some people had never seen one.
Well, they were simply wonderful. The names were there, the people were there, the different aircraft, the parachute jumping.
I'm going up and make a triple parachute jump.
Watch closely and you'll see him leave for the long drop. He's off. Now you can see how it feels. Wouldn't that make you dizzy? Now keep your eye on Joe, because he's going to cut the rope. There he goes. He drops 300 feet more and then opens a second parachute. What a thrill and what on earth. Number 3. And down he goes for the final drop. He must have trained for this on some of those skyscraper elevators. Well, he certainly earned his salary today. And after that, it's just a joyride for Joe. But he has to look out that he doesn't do a Santa Claus act and land in somebody's chimney. Joe risked his life today to show that it's possible to carry extra parachutes, so that if one fails to open, you still have a couple more. Just like carrying a couple of spare tires.
This girl come over from Germany with a small plane and a mechanic. And her name was Fräulein Thea Rasch, and she could stand still in the air if she got enough headwind. And she used to do that right over the field. She's a big blonde dame, so I enjoyed that. I can't remember the name of the plane. It was a little sport job.
Also arriving from Europe to dumbfound his audiences and his American flying colleagues was German air ace Ernst Udet.
He used this little biplane and was doing things like picking up handkerchiefs with his wingtips, and/or he'd have a hook on his fin, and the inverted pickup would be done with the tail low and then climbing out inverted and rolling back up straight. It appeared as if it looked more as if he were doing it with mirrors, because you look at this airplane, a little 7-cylinder engine, doing these maneuvers, and it didn't seem as if there was such a thing as flying speed. It just didn't seem to need anything, as if you'd steer a balloon around here and there.
Early on, a man out on the end of the wing transferring to another airplane was an exciting thing to see, because he'd get out, and once he got out the end of that wing, the airplane wasn't in balance anymore, and the pilot had to be ready to pull that wing up, and he'd get the other one right under it. It's really quite a dangerous thing, but I never saw anybody that missed, although they have them all over the country.
The only one that really put an air show on every Sunday at Roosevelt Field was Al Williams. He had a Curtiss Hawk, and he had a English Bliss Jupiter engine in it. And there was nobody could fly with the smoothness of Al Williams. I thought he was the greatest. I don't think there was any airport that I have ever been that will ever be the equal of Roosevelt Field, because the number of airplanes that were there, and the activity was there, and the type of individual that flew there, they were above the average. You could see it.
But Sundays, everybody went for a ride. Not everybody. I would use the word everybody. And to set the record straight, you never saw our car on a Sunday with 1 or 2 people in it. When it went, it was full of people. There weren't too many cars. Everybody didn't have a car. So when they went someplace, and they always had them little boxes or little chairs between the front seat and the back seat for the kids. And a trunk on the back or a thing tied on the side, and they went to the beach, and they would, if there was an airport, they all went to the airport and maybe bought a ride if they had the money. They had a scale there. It was a penny a pound then for quite a while. And you'd get on the scale. If you weighed 110 pounds, you paid $1.10. And some of the kids' job was to put their foot on the scale when nobody was looking. That way the pilot got a little bit more for the airplane.
And the people came down here, the airplane's right there. Well, you want to fly? Well, I don't know. Well, come on, take a look. And you show me the airplane like you show them a car today. And, of course, that was just salesmanship.
Finally, they get interested and want to go for a ride. And they had these blockers. They got this guy had a brand new airplane, and the blockers were saying, ride in the newest airplane on the field. And the other guy said, it's the newest airplane and the newest pilot. You know, they were trying.
Guy come along with a buck and he wanted to go for an airplane ride. So we go down Rockaway Boulevard, further down to the west. And gasoline at that time was 11 gallons for 88 cents. The guy at the airport was 8 or 9 for $1. There was a gas station on the airport property. But down there we got 11 gallons. So you put 2 5-gallon cans in the car, a gallon in the tank, and still had 12 cents change to stop and get the White Castle 2 hamburgers. And off we'd go and give them a ride. And then, you know, a short ride and save some gas for ourselves. And then we'd fly around till it quit. When it quit, glide in and land and wait till you get some more money.
It was always desirable to make sure they didn't get sick, because the routine was that the pilot that got his airplane messed up had to clean it himself, and I happily never had a passenger sick back in those days. Maybe on the airline I did, but not flying out of Roosevelt Field.
We did a terrific business there until the crash. Then when the crash came, things changed. But we were busy all day long. On a weekend, I'd come home with $300 if the weather was good. If the weather was bad, not a penny. So the wife didn't know whether to spend money or not until I came home. I never counted the dollar bills. I just counted the $5 bills and the 10s and shoved them under the rug, and that was it.
As engines became more powerful and questionable design departures were introduced, the human toll on Long Island began to rise. There was the streamlined Bonnie Gull with hydraulically flappable wings.
Well, one day the time came for its takeoff, and I was standing on the southwest corner of the field. Bonnie took off and towards us, and he got up about 50 feet, just over the edge of the field itself. The nose dropped a little bit, it came up, and then went straight in, full power on. And of course that was a very impressionable calamity for me as a boy.
Every weekend, 1 or 2 airplanes would spin in, you know. They kept the Daily News busy on the front page, I can guarantee you that. But there were all kinds of aircraft accidents. There were at least 4 or 5 a week.
There are all kinds of hangers-on and people wandering around.
But it really marks the end of that production, but we're looking at many more in the future. We're really looking forward to doing a special on Eleanor Smith alone. There's an interesting story that relates to that, and I wonder if I can tell that to you.
Well, I think so. Now, let me just see if I can back up a little bit, because already everybody who's seen the show now knows that one of her famous feats to answer a dare was to fly under all 4 bridges around Manhattan.
That's right.
But when we see your film, we don't see this on film, but you have something exciting.
And very interesting, because last night we couldn't find that footage anywhere, even though it had been recorded at that time. In fact, several news organizations had recorded it, and they wanted it, and several did because they wanted to be sure there was no one else in the cockpit except her. Well, we couldn't find this. We had gone to California, we went to the University of South Carolina, which has the entire Fox Movietone collection. We checked other sources, and we came up with a 0. Last night, and this is the honest-to-God truth, last night, Eleanor called me, and she said, "You're not going to believe this." And I said, "What could it possibly be?" And she said, "The footage that we have all been looking for the last 5 years," she says, "I have it. It was finally given to me, and it came from Hearst." And we just had no idea that it was there.
So hopefully you can do an entire show about her if we have enough member support tonight.
If people call in and call 272-1313, our viewers, our co-producers call in and help us, we will do an entire program on Eleanor Smith. And we are also planning to do an entire program on Bert Acosta, who was an absolutely extraordinary human being. It was a tragic story. It was a glorious story. Here was a fellow who not only knew how to fly better than anybody else in the world, and that was attested to by his peers. He also went over to Spain during the Spanish Civil War, and he flew in that war. And the story is that he actually shot down Messerschmitts in a little biplane. Now, we have to dig into that and find out what exactly happened.
So these are all future projects.
These are
Hopefully
future projects.
You will do, but again, in the way we often say to our viewers, we really can't do them without you. The money that you send us now to 1-800-272-1313 in honor of this program will produce another wonderful program like this down the road if they call in tonight. That's the way it works.
Absolutely, and the museum, Josh's museum, the Cradle of Aviation Museum, stands ready to back us up again with material that some of which we were able to get from Josh, and had it not been for Josh and the Cradle, half the show probably wouldn't exist. He was a great resource for us.
Mike, you know, I know you've had a long career in this industry, an Emmy Award-winning career, worked for the major networks. Tell us a little bit about what makes working for public television so special.
Well, you know, I think as a viewer, I only watch Channel 13, and that's really true because I really am tired of looking at the bedlam that's on the other channels, on so many other channels, I should say. And really, we have the opportunity here to produce something that we really believe in. Very often, if one goes to other sources for putting material on the air, you find that we don't quite fit in because we're not doing the kinds of things that are often on other channels. I'm trying to be polite about it.
But literally, where else would you see a program like Daredevils and Dreamers other than on public television?
I don't think there is no other avenue for us to go to. So when we are looking at Eleanor Smith's story and Bert Acosta's story and other stories that we're working on, we really have to look to Channel 13 in the hope that the viewers will be out there, that they will indeed honestly call 272-1313. Be our co-producers, please.
Mike, thanks an awful lot for being with us again. Congratulations on the film, and I hope to see you back here in a year or so talking about your latest project.
We really look forward to it.
Thanks an awful lot.
Thanks a lot, Tom.
And right now, here's one of our 13 stories that we hope will inspire you to begin one of your own with us tonight.
I wanted to be a fireman, I guess, 6, 7, maybe even before. It was just something I got a hold of. My son's a lot like me that way. He's not a fireman, but he's always known what he wants to be.
After I got over wanting to be an astronaut, about 10 years old, I decided I wanted to be a biomedical researcher.
Brandon was a unique little kid, very inquisitive, always wanted to know how something worked. He was always watching the science shows, the Novas, anything that had to do with outer space.
I watched MathNet a lot and Square One TV, and I watched 321 Contact. A lot of the science shows helped me learn more about what I was interested in.
I can tell you how I knew Brandon was going to be a scientist. We've always gone fishing together, and one year he realized that the little sunnies on our lake were stealing all his bait. So he got a bucket full of tadpoles, and his idea was to put the tadpoles in our lake. They turn out to be big frogs and hopefully eat the little sunny eggs.
Come on, get in there.
That's the kind of kid Brandon was, and I think all those science shows had something to do with it. You know, I used to take Channel 13 for granted, but when I see him pursuing what he's pursuing, I think it focused him on where he's headed now.
Well, it's been a very exciting night for us. We've been up in the air on Long Island, and now Patti LaBelle, Janice, is about to take us for another kind of a musical trip.
She sure is, and what a wonderful trip it is. I'm really excited that this is airing tonight.
And I understand we also have some very special guests coming in the studio.
We certainly do. This evening, we have Sarah Dash coming, the wonderful Sarah Dash, who is one of the members of the group called LaBelle. We also have another special guest, David Byrne, who is about to launch the second season of 13's innovative music series, Sessions at West 54th Street, as its new host.
That's great. So
That's
we'll be looking
exciting.
forward to that in our intermissions. And we have some, I'd just like to point out, we also have some other wonderful programming coming up.
Oh, good. You're going to tell us what's ahead?
Well, if you ask me, first of all, you know...
Oh, please tell us.
Well, I will. Tomorrow night, Dr. Christian Northrup, a wonderful woman's doctor dealing in women's issues, is going to be here in our studio with us. A great show that's been on before. We're going to have a revival of Molly O'Neill's New York. Now, this is a great show about food. This basically is food everywhere in New York, and it's a fun show. They went everywhere around the city, different neighborhoods. It's a lot of fun. That's going to be on a couple nights. We're going to have an encore. Last night we had a show called A Walk Down 42nd Street with David Hartman. This is a brand new show made locally right here by 13. It was a big hit last night, and if you haven't seen it, we're really hoping to give you another opportunity. It's going to be on again, Walk Down 42nd Street.
I just have to interrupt.
Okay,
do that.
Okay.
This is why you guys have to call. Where else are you going to see this kind of programming? I mean, it's wonderful.
It's absolutely true, not to
so,
mention...
I mean, I know there's more.
Oh, there's always more. We have a night with Skitch Henderson in honor of his 80th birthday. That's going to be on Friday night, taped at Carnegie Hall. And don't forget our friend James Taylor, a concert that we broadcast live earlier this summer, is going to be on again over the weekend. And of course, on Sunday night, those three wacky tenors, Placido Domingo, Luciano Pavarotti, and I'm leaving somebody out, Jose Carreras will be an encore broadcast of their concert from Paris. So that's all coming up in the next few days, and it all is made possible by you when you make a phone call to 1-800-272-1313. I'm getting what's called the electronic hook.
And now, enjoy a concert that's definitive Patti LaBelle at her most engaging. We hope it convinces you to participate in this event in the best way possible. We need to hear from you right now at 1-800-272-1313 tonight. We have a lot of great Patti LaBelle gifts to send you when you do, so get in touch. We'll be here all through the concert, so join us anytime the spirit moves you, but please make it soon. Enjoy the show.
Our lines will remain open during the program. Or you can mail your check to 13, Box 1313, New York 10101.